We're back with another episode of JagCast. We got a special guest here. I am your editor-in-chief of the Mesquite, Oscar Gonzalez. Jerry Guiano is behind his computer over there.
Wearing headset and finally got my camera back, so I'm feeling pretty good today.
Yes, he's not in the dark this time.
Yeah, I'm not just a voice, a bot.
He's not just there clicking away. But our special guest today is Brandon Oliver. Brandon, I'll let you say your title because A, it keeps changing, and B, it's long. So
actually we shortened it this past summer. It's the Creative Design Manager here at Texas A&M-San Antonio.
Okay, Creative Design Manager.
Uh-huh.
So the big sort of hubbub recently is that you created the Fiesta medals, and now you're getting a lot of praise for how popular they are.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I posted something today. Another employee here at Texas A&M San Antonio put up a graphic of the last 7 medals, the last 7 years. And I didn't even realize that. I know I've been a part of this institution. I think I came with the building, right? But I didn't realize it had been 7 years. So, but it was cool to see the medals throughout the years. And this one is, picking up on popularity. I can tell you right now, they're selling really well at the bookstore. We ordered 2,000 of them, and we're almost out. I don't know if we'll actually even have any coming up to the Festival de Cascarones. I mean, we'll try to. But it's so popular right now.
So, Jerry, I don't know if you can pull it up, but Kids 5 did a video where they showed the Fiesta College medals and they focused on Trinity, UTSA, and Brandon's design for A&M. What I love about the story, though, and I was telling some people about this, is that they sort of explain where the Fiesta medals came from. Because I gotta admit, I didn't know about Fiesta medals till 4 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And it just, so it was just not one of those things that never. And so the Gen story goes. Legend has it that in 1985, come on, legend has it that 30 years ago. But and it was the King of Fiesta put on a medal, and so became the Fiesta medal, 1985.
Yeah, with the DeLorean, 1985, growing, some of the great TV shows at the time, A-Team, and this and that, and the Fiesta medals, right?
And the Fiesta medals. I just like that. Legend said 1985 in a world long ago.
I'll be honest, I didn't even know about it really till I got here.
Yeah.
And Dr. Maria Hernandez Ferrier, the first president here, was a great lady. I love Dr. Ferrier, but she was so into Fiesta and really pushed for the university to have its own Fiesta event, to have a presence at the Fiesta events, and to have a Fiesta medal. So when I was first assigned the task, I was like, what's a Fiesta medal? You know what I mean? I really didn't know. I'll be honest. I was born here and I've lived all over the country, but I've lived most of my life here in San Antonio, and I'm not a Fiesta guy.
Yeah.
I've gone, because I was curious about it. So, I went to some of the other Fiesta events, and I'm mostly when it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm kind of private. So I'm like, it's not all that it's cracked up to be for me, right? But, it's a big part of our city and a big part of our culture. And so it's an honor to make a medal and represent our growing university at, pretty much the key event for our city.
Yeah, because, we got it there, but, especially with last year's medal and this year's medal, your medals that you're designing are actually, they have a little something extra to them. It's not just, here's a medal. Last year's, it was a little egg and it popped open.
Yeah.
And this year, it spins to show the both sides at the golden egg that's going to be at the festival. Right.
Well, last year's was, the Cascarone that opened, right? And that one was well received because of of how interactive it was. And I know News for San Antonio, they recognized the medal, or gave it an award or some sort of recognition. The Express News did too. And then of course this year now you have Kids 5, and there's a few other things that we submitted the medal to. And this year, it's a spinner. So we're going with the same egg concept or Cascarone concept, with the crack in the middle. This time it doesn't open though, but it spins. We would still want to keep the interaction going. and on one side it's the Jaguar ripping through the Cascaron. On the other side, it's gold for the Golden Egg contest, which is pretty cool. It was a great idea of the committee, the Fiesta committee, to come up with this Golden Egg contest, and it went through some different variations. But you have this Golden Egg contest where if they go to festivaldecascarons.com and the RSVP, it's free. I mean, it literally takes like 30 seconds to do it, even less than that. They're automatically entered. The day of the Festival of Cascarons, we're going to randomly choose a winner. We have like a little random machine or whatever, and chooses the winner. There's 3 prizes. One is a tuition voucher for $2,500. Another one is a textbook voucher for $1,500, and another one is an iPad. So pretty good gifts. Those are all coming from the foundation here at Texas A&M-San Antonio. So thank you to the foundation. But we toyed with a lot of different concepts. A lot of different ideas were thrown around in these committee meetings. But I'm really glad that this one, was refined and we stuck to it, because I think it just adds another element, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many festivals you've seen. Like my other job, we have medal, and I mean, it's a nice little medal. It's a 10th anniversary, so it's colors of the company, but it's not that interactive. It's not that special.
Yeah. It's funny, we were already kicking around ideas for next year. Myself and the strategic advisor, Nick Longo here.
Right.
We're already kicking around ideas for next year. And we have 2 really good ideas that we're excited about. I don't want to say what they are yet.
Let me guess.
Tell us a little bit about them.
Let me guess. It has something to do with eggs.
It has something to do with eggs, and it has
Call me crazy. I think it has an egg in it.
And it's going to be interactive, because we didn't realize when we first started making these medals a few years ago is that we thought we just came up with a flat design, right? Some company out there goes and melts it or whatever and shapes it, and that's it. We didn't realize that, oh man, they could do some interactive stuff to it too, right? So that's why we came up with the Cascaron that opens, the spinner, and some other concepts that we thought of too, where they're very interactive and are fun to play with, right? I didn't realize so many people collected these things too. I mean, they're like,
well, I remember. So this year I didn't see, but last year there was like a long line for that medal.
Yes.
At the bookstore where we had them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's lines to get these medals.
Yeah, and they're going through them. I'm seeing the bookstore people every couple of days asking for more medals. So, like I said, it's doing really well.
And we're not really even advertising it. I mean,
no, we're not.
We posted our story, and Jerry, you have that up, right?
I think we posted once or twice on social media. That was we did a Giphy, right, where we showed it spinning around.
It's a GIF.
Is it a GIF though?
Okay, so it's a GIF, but it doesn't count.
I call it Giphy because what the heck?
It's a GIF. It's not Jud. It's good.
But so we had that, and it was pretty cool, right? But we really haven't done a whole lot of marketing behind the medal. It's kind of sold itself, which is great. That's outstanding.
Yeah. Well, you said it yourself. So let's sort of delve into your background, because you've literally been here with the practically since the school opened.
Right.
How did that come about? What were you doing before this?
Before here, believe it or not, I was teaching English, freshman and sophomore English for Natalia High School, and prior to that, I was working with KLRN Public Television, much in the same capacity that I am in now. But I always wanted to get my teaching certificate, which I totally advocate for students here at the university, is to also get a teaching certificate, because you always have a job waiting for you, right? Yeah. So I love teaching. I love working with youth. It's something I do find really interesting and I'm passionate about. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go through Region 20 and, get the certificate, since I already have my bachelor's. And part of the Region 20 is that you have to do a 1-year paid internship, right? And so I had to leave my job at KLRN, and I taught, and it was great. I loved it. I have, so much respect for our teachers right now. I already had respect going into it, but I have even more now, but I managed to keep up my contacts through PRSA, which is another thing I advocate students here to do, is be a part of organizations like PRSA and things of that nature. And so I kept up my contacts, and I saw that there was a job opening for a communication specialist with Texas A&M University Kingsville System Center, San Antonio. Right, it still had the Kingsville System Center.
It just rose off the top.
It does, yes.
And this was 2009.
This would be summer 2008.
2008.
So I had signed my contract to teach again the following year, but I applied for this job, and Mary Lou Reyna was here, and she was in charge of marketing, and she gave me the interview, and then I met with Dr. Ferrier afterward, who, like I said before, I love her. She's just such a dynamic, personality, and I was sold on it, and talking about a college that was in an elementary school, it was at the Gillette, the Gillette campus, right? Oliveira's elementary school. And so for me to take that dive, was really a leap of faith, right? Because I had to go back to my principal and say, hey, I understand.
After your high school stuff, I'm going to college.
Yeah. I was like, I'm sorry. I know that I signed the contract to teach next year, but I got another opportunity. He didn't like that a whole lot, but it's okay. He understood, and I was trying to tell him, like, I'm doing things. If we could go back in time with other universities and establish them from the ground up, that's what we're doing here, right? So I believed in what we were doing, and I saw the bigger picture. I mean, Texas A&M as a system is not going to let this fail in the city of San Antonio. It's just not going to happen. So would I like to jump on board right now and be in charge of so many things that the public see for the university? Yes. Every time I drive by the tower and I see the seal that I created out there, I know I made that seal, and I'm not going to live forever, and this university will live on without me, right? But I know it's going to take a lot of effort for them to take down that seal.
In 50 years.
Yeah.
Every day before finals, we go to the Brandon seal,
Yeah.
and we run naked.
But seriously though, I do. That's why I came here, because I knew. I remember when I first made an ad that appeared on one of the billboards here in San Antonio, and I pulled over on the highway and I took a picture of it. Just seeing things that I created that get out there and are responsible for a tremendous amount of growth. When I was at Gillette, there were maybe 700 students at the time, and now we're over 4,500. Now you have incoming freshmen, sophomore, which is going to completely change the dynamic.
Yeah, it's going to get nuts.
So, it's been cool. It's been what I expected. It hasn't, come easily, right? It had its own sets of challenges and continues to, but I wouldn't have it any other way. That's why I came here. And it feels very much like when you work here that it's a mission, that you are. Because, you work with some of these, I don't want to throw out names, but you work with some of these other companies, maybe some big ones over like on Fredericksburg Road and stuff like that.
And then I work on Fredericksburg Road. Who are you talking about?
I think I know that company.
Oh, I do too. That was a big part of my life.
Okay.
Because my mother worked there and she retired there and took me all over the place. And then my wife currently works there right now. But here's the thing, though, and it's a great place because, God, man, the end of year bonuses are like 18% and, stuff like that.
Oh, that place.
Yeah. Yes.
See, I'm getting confused.
Pretty awesome Christmas party, too.
Yes.
I thought you were talking West
Christmas
marketing.
Christmas parties at the Alamo Dome with Darius Rucker performing. You know what I mean?
I used to work there and that's when they brought in Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had Earth, Wind, and Fire, too, one year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
ZZ Top.
So why are you trashing that company?
I'm not trashing it. Actually, it's a fantastic company. I hope a lot of our students work there.
I trash it.
But no, the difference is, well, that's the word, is difference. I feel like I would have made more of a difference here than I did, with USA. Because I could have got in there, with my mother working there and my wife working there. But here I just feel like I make so much more of an immediate impact, and especially as an artist, as a graphic artist, that's very important.
I remember, I think it was last semester, or was it last year, we had some people come on campus, and they were doing like focus groups, and and they ask, well, what's interesting about coming here? And I go, well, I know for us with here at the Mesquite, it's like we're starting all these traditions.
Right.
We're starting stuff like the podcast, like all these accounts. So we're starting stuff to where like today we had a surprise party for some more. That could be something that happened that goes on and on. That's one of the things, because I did a presentation at TIPA, Texas Intercollegiate Press Association, and I did this thing where I'm like, here's all the stuff we're doing at the Mesquite, and people were raising their hands. So how do underclassmen talk to upperclassmen? Because we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys get on? How do you guys talk to each other? We go Facebook. But I don't think we could do that. And I don't think we can use Google Drive. And I don't think we can. It's like, poor
they
kids.
have
And
procedures.
these are universities that have been around for 50, 60
Right.
years. And their press groups are just like, we don't even talk to our editors.
And that's a blessing and a curse. It really is, because the blessing is, one of the taglines we use is be first. So we're establishing a lot of firsts here at the university. Another one of the taglines that we use is same spirit, new traditions, right? So you have the power of the A&M name, which is a powerful name, right? But you're establishing new traditions, and speaking from the creative design area, one of the things that we've kind of had to pull back the reins on is the use of maroon, because we see the use of maroon everywhere. And it's hard for a university to I don't want to say separation, because we're not separating from the A&M system. We're a part of the A&M system. But you still have to establish an identity that's unique to yourself, and it's unique to your community and the culture that resides there.
Yeah. A&M Kingsville is not,
Yeah.
You can tell there was an A&M Kingsville and College Station.
Right. So
it's all about being different than College Station. That's it.
So, but you have to establish a unique identity in order to brand yourself. You have to, right? So, so what you just said is both blessing and curse. That there isn't a lot of what they call procedures or protocols in place, which is a good thing in that you establish them. But it's also a bad thing in that a lot of the day-to-day things are kind of confusing, and I can understand that. One of the things that we're doing is we're trying to come up with a very, very robust brand and style guide for the university. We've had one, but I don't think it served all of our needs. But it's also going to come with templates, because one of the things that we noticed here, and God bless the students for working on them, but the flyers on the screens are so there's such a wide range of those flyers. There's some that are good, and there's some that are very, very bad, right? and like I said, God bless them, because I know they're trying to get the word out about their organization, about their events. Perfect example, the history department, they're going to have a Holocaust speaker coming up. I think at the end of this month, and Dr. Westerman, a brilliant professor here, he sent me a flyer, right? And it was made in PowerPoint, and I don't mean to call him out, but I'm trying to show that where this is coming in. So he sent me a flyer, and I could tell he worked hard on it and stuff like that. And I said, Dr. Westerman, if you don't mind, I would like to attempt to recreate this flyer. Because, a Holocaust survivor, there's not many left. And there's, as the years go by, they're going to be completely gone, right? So I think this is an event with a huge magnitude. It also goes back to my theory that experience counts here at the university so big. That's our number one seller, is making experiences. And I'll touch on that in a second. But so I made a flyer that was a lot cleaner and had a lot more of our brand standards inside of it. And I showed him, I was like, if you want to use yours, go ahead. If you would like to use mine, go ahead. And he was like, I'm going to use yours. And there's so many tools out there that people can use. I hate it when they're like, all right, Brandon, let me show you a flyer. And I start to see them open Microsoft Office. And I'm just like, oh, man, there's so many. There's web-based tools like Canva.com and things like that are free or nominal. I think Canva charges maybe $1.
That's what we use. It's like $1 a month.
Yeah, there's so many tools out there I tell people this too, like you can't build a house without the right tools, right? And you can have the best intentions in the world. I'm going to build this, beautiful house. I'm going to build it for the homeless or whatever, right? But if you don't have the tools, it's just going to fall completely apart. It's going to, look like a shack, right? But if you have the right tools, it's going to be nice. And it's the same thing here. We just need, the communications department's working really hard right now on developing that standards guide, so that way it is streamlined, and that way student orgs and various departments can, pick from one of 5 templates, right? And, and I want them to understand, like there's some flyers I'll look at, and on the screens you go by every 10 seconds, and they stock it with so much information.
Yeah, just here it is. Here's the other. Here's our website. Here's this. Okay.
And even with the corrected glasses on, I'm still struggling to read everything, and I'm sure what is on there is crucial and important to them, and big part of their thing. But marketing wise, if you're walking down the hallway, or if you're in our cafeteria, or you're in student activities playing pool or whatever, are you really going to sit there and just stare at the screen? No, you're going to be walking by it. You're going to be doing something to look up from your book and see it. Yeah. So it has to be like eye-catching, date, time, RSVP info. That's it. That's all you need, right? So, I think we're getting to a place, you've seen the growth just in the short amount of time. Communications went from, relying so heavily on print materials and things like that to now, it took a little changeover, a little change in direction, but more of a strategic marketing and more online marketing and stuff like that. And
so how has that been for you? Because, we'll talk about your other job.
Sure.
But,
sure.
How has it been? Because, that's always one thing that sort of slows down everybody. We, us being on, on the journalist side, we see it all the time with,
Right.
newspapers and whatnot. I was saying the other day, the Express News, where they broke one of the biggest stories in the year regarding Antonin Scalia's death, and I was remarking, they could have created a 1-minute video, and that video, if they put it on that story, could have made them like $10,000 just on YouTube ads.
Right.
Didn't even think about it.
Right.
Like they could have put it on Instagram. They could have made a quick video. They could have done live streaming. Went over the heads. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what I'm trying to sort of change to where people understand the digital side and how you could be use that. So your end, you're saying you're going from paper to online. Has that been?
And the key though has been strategy, and a lot of the initiatives that we're doing now are much more strategic, right? One of the things that at our department, thanks to Nick Longo, created initially was like a funnel website, a starting website for prospective students or for the community to go to, which is becomeajaguar.com. And he launched it initially with, if you go to becomeajaguar.com, sign up, you get a free t-shirt. And we got a lot of little eyebrows raised because of the free t-shirt part. But here's the thing, the t-shirt, is a really nice t-shirt. It's not like the little cheap ones, right? It's a really nice t-shirt. But what Nick and our department was trying to get across is you have a beautiful campus here at Texas A&M-San Antonio. Whenever I invite vendors or special guests or anyone here, or the president does, or anyone here, when someone comes over the hill on University Way, right? Because at first they see the tower. Tower's kind of cool, and then they just see brush and cows and horses and stuff, right? And then they go over the hill and they're like, wow, that's a legit campus. It really is a legit campus. So once you get someone on campus and they start to develop the experience, there's no greater selling point, right? So that's what we were trying to do. And we use key performance indicators such as tours and other things like that. And the number of tours of our campuses shot up dramatically from previous years. Whether they're individual or group, right? So, it's working. It's getting people out here. And one of the things that we believe in is doing key things, but doing them very well, right? So in the past, we've tried to, distribute evenly amongst our marketing. This year it was a straight TV, right? Some print, some movies, especially during Star Wars when that came out, and we knew it'd be popular, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we just doubled down on our TV commercials, right? Our social media, we're not out there trying to take over every application or platform. We're just doing Facebook really well, Twitter really well, and Instagram really well. The other ones could come in time, right? But you start nailing those down and making them, sharp and good, and it'll get across, right? So those are some of the marketing initiatives we've been doing. And the other thing is, and I'll take some selfish bragging rights on this one.
Okay.
The other things that we've been doing is I've been trying to create, like I said before, you don't have housing here, nor a specialized degree yet. So you have a non-traditional school, you have a commuter school. So you have to sell it on experience. I always tell people this story. I applied for several different colleges, right? For this personal story. As a young man, I applied for several different colleges, and I took a tour of one of the universities, the one that I ended up picking actually, and it was an overnight stay, right? Overnight orientation in one of the dorm rooms.
Really can't do that here.
That was bingo number one, right?
Unless you want to go sleep with the cows.
Bingo number two was, I was a young single man, right? I'm driving over, there's like a park and a river, and I'm driving over, the campus, and I look over and I see all these beautiful girls, and you know what I mean? And that's part of the experience, right? Bingo number two. Bingo number three was during the orientation, they broke you down by major. And at the time, I'll be honest, I wasn't even a communications major. I wasn't even sold on it. But they took me to where they had their communication stuff at, and they were like, yeah, you could be on the radio and call basketball games. You can be on the TV and be a news anchor or a reporter. You can do the newspaper and blah, blah, and be the editor. And I was like, oh, man, no, that's for graduate students, blah, blah. And they're like, no, your first year, right? And I was like, wow. And that actually sold me. I was not a communications major at all. I had some interest in it, but not really. But that sold me. So the experience is what sold me. I truly believe in that. So what I've been trying to do this past year for Texas A&M-San Antonio is open up some experiences for groups of individuals that have passions, but sometimes don't feel included, right? So one of the things we did was we brought Alamo City Comic-Con on. They had a Star Wars art exhibition over at Centro de Artes just days before the Force Awakens came out. Drew like 700 people, 800 people, something like that. So again, you have an avenue, a genre of people that are passionate about Comic-Con, Star Wars, and stuff like that. And they're like, wow, oh, cool. I didn't know that A&M-San Antonio embraced that, right? Same thing, I brought down Jake the Snake Roberts recently and Bushwhacker Luke. For wrestling, and that's what I know best, but I'm trying to get everybody to see, like, once you start opening up the experiences, then those groups of people will feel included. Like, hey, I will go there. I could meet friends that, like the same
stuff. Because we were both at the Jake the Snake thing, so obviously that wasn't a lot of students.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty much, the wrestling fans throughout the city that came by to check it out.
But check this out, though. Okay, so, whatever that event costs, okay, what's the average tuition for our students here? So if just one student, if one person sat there and was like, man, that's pretty cool that you have Jake, I'll come to school here, right? It paid for itself, probably 10, 15 times more, right? Yeah. So,
and it helped, and it's another thing to sort of get the word out. Because, I mean, Jake the Snake was talking about it, and then, you had a bunch of younger people who may already be in college, who may have to go back to college, and this was a good opportunity for them to say, like you said, hey, look at this.
One time I was walking around the halls here, and I saw a flyer, and it said John Leguizamo, right? And I was like, my God, we got John Leguizamo here. And then I read the fine print that it was like a video conference.
Yeah, that's the I think the leadership organization over the college business. They do that.
Yeah, and but I mean that got me thinking. I was like, man, what if we had John Leguizamo here? You know what I mean? So like for example, the festival at Cascarones this year, I was in charge of the entertainment, and man, we went through tons and tons of artists, and we settled.
Who were some of the artists that you talked about?
They were specifically country artists because we wanted a country feel. However, I will say this. Mr. Longo always aims high, and he was like, "Oh man, we can get Green Day down here. We can get Red Hot Chili Peppers." And I'm like, "Nick, how much money do you think we have for this thing?" And he's like, "Go big or go home," you know.
It's got a point.
But he does.
But I mean, those two bands. How do you know if they're touring?
Yeah.
True.
And the thing is, you want to work up in stages. You want to make sure that your growth matches.
Might as well just ask for Beyonce.
Yeah. I mean, do we have the infrastructure in place to support an event like that? You know what I mean? But we went with Tracy Lawrence. He's a great name for the 90s, and he'll do well. We're also doing some other things like the Golden A contest. Yeah. We're showing Big Hero 6 in the auditorium for the kids. Because it's going to change every year. I know last year, we had a kids zone. We're still going to have a kids zone. But last year, my daughter went, right? She's gone every year. But last year, my daughter went, and she was so overwhelmed by the heat. Like, she played in the bouncy houses or whatever, right, for like 20 minutes, and it came out dripping in sweat. Yeah. So one of the main things that I stayed hard on the committee with is opening up the auditorium and just showing a movie, right? And whether it's Big Hero 6 or another, it doesn't matter. Just so kids can go in there and cool down, and it's going to keep people there longer.
Or how about this? Air-conditioned bouncy houses.
I don't know why that hasn't been invented yet.
Just air-conditioned. Just throw it in there.
Yeah.
So regarding all this, because regarding the T-shirts and how, the marketing changed. So, I mean, when is that pivot, do you think is going to happen?
Oh, when the freshmen come in. Because when the freshmen come in, the dynamic changes, right? Yeah. The average age per student, the background, all that stuff comes into play, right? And so, whereas the average age now for students probably like 32, 33, it's going to go back down. Yeah. And, people say what they want about age, right? Age is just a number. It's not really, I don't think the same things now that I did when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, right? So it's going to be a major shift. It's going to require a whole lot, but at the same time, once you become a comprehensive university, once housing is added, a lot of it's going to be a machine that rolls on itself, right? I mean, it's just going to keep rolling, right? Versus right now, the strategy is, hey, we're here, right? So, but it's going to change, it's going to grow, it's going to adapt. So you'll see changes over the next year or so.
Because that's going to be the interesting thing is that when the commercials change to where it's along the lines of like the bigger universities to where it shows off the different aspects. Because I mean we still can only show 3 buildings, but I mean obviously very soon there's gonna be more buildings and that's all gonna change. And
everybody looks at this place as legit. I mean, like I said, when they come over to, I can't tell you how many vendors and people I've had. They're like, wow, there's a huge amount of potential here.
Oh yeah.
And I would love to see, the student life really, pick up. I think there should be something in the auditorium like every weekend.
Well, I always say about UTSA when I was in high school, way back when. When I was in high school, way back when. I mean, UTSA wasn't, the be-all, end-all. I mean, it was kind of like, you got an UTSA, It's kind of like back then, I don't pretend to
we're not talking smack about UTSA.
Yeah, but I was saying is back then, it was like, I mean, if you're in UTSA, you might as well go to SAC. Yeah. That's the way we viewed it back in high school because it's like they don't even have dorms there. Mm-hmm. They didn't have dorms. You had to take the bus and you had to drive.
And what's funny about that is, because that's what we always get compared to, right? Because it's a public institution. So, UTSA does this. You have to understand, UTSA was built over a longer period of time, and there's heavy expectations for us to build in a much shorter amount of time. And I mean, like I said, from 2008 to now, I mean, it's two completely different worlds.
I tell them, it's like back when I went for like one semester, there was 6 buildings at UTSA. And that was over a course of 30 years.
Right.
And they just got to 6 buildings.
Right.
Now look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just 3 years, 4 years. It's
I
3
remember
buildings.
when the College of Business was at St. Joseph's, and you know, and it was like, you know, it was hard to sell that because it's the type of place that you don't want to go at night. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it was, you know. But I remember it being at St. Joseph's, and now, you know, it's at Brooks, and eventually it's going to come here. You know, I remember the portables and things like that. And so, I mean, to go from that, you know, to go from an elementary school, right? And that's exactly how it was built. I mean, you know, down to the bathrooms. I mean, it just looked like an elementary school, right?
Where the toilets were.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was trying to get at, but I don't know how much I could say. So, I mean, you know, to grow to this, you know, where you have state-of-the-art facilities and, you know, like I said, the auditorium, believe me, looking all over San Antonio for venues, that thing should be packed every weekend. And I would love to see 10, 20 years from now, concerts and plays and comedians and
so
so
that the
many
comedians
things.
could offend people, and then we have protests. Yeah, Brandon, you're right on protests.
Oh, man.
I'll be happy.
Hey, but you know what though? Yeah, going back to the, you know, getting diverse groups of speakers and developing experience. I mean, yeah, that you've seen comedians play universities all the time, right? And that's just part of it. Like, you know, it's part of an experience, right? You know, as you live on campus, you have preconceived notions of what you think college is, right? And that's what I was going back to when I was choosing a university. I was like, you know, I saw some other ones, and I was like, man, that's not really what I saw on TV, right? Or it's not really what I envisioned, right? When I saw this one, I was like,
There we go.
yeah, all right, let me shell out the bucks,
Yeah,
right?
that's my Animal House.
You know, but it doesn't have to be that, but it creates an experience, right? You know, I know I'm still friends with several people that I met from college, you know, this many years later, right? You know, for a lot of people I know, at the ring ceremony this past weekend, a couple got engaged, right? That's the first time I think that's ever happened. I mean, that's what I'm saying, that, you know, people pay for, yes, education and academics and getting a degree and making more money. I mean, hello, everybody wants that, right? But at the same time, there's also another component inside you that wants a life experience too, right? So,
Yeah. And that's where I always feel a little bad for some of the people that don't get to experience that, because like my first year, you know, up in college, where I lived on the dorms, where, you know, I used to DJ parties, and
right?
So that's you know, that's a real interesting experience, and it's
Right.
like you really can't do that when you gotta drive half an hour. It really doesn't work the same.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I didn't know you were a DJ.
I DJ'd for a bit back before you know, DJs were that everybody was, you know, DJing from an iPod, you know, back when you DJ'd with CDs.
yeah.
What was your DJ name?
Yeah, just DJ OG. Simple, but it worked.
Yeah.
Simple yet effective.
Yeah. So, well, let's delve into this sort of second
All right.
lifestyle. Let's talk with Boom Boom,
Yeah.
as he's known as.
Yes.
So the other profession, and Jerry, you're bringing that up, right, is that Brandon Oliver here. He is the promoter of River City Wrestling. So, and I've been to a couple shows, and so how does one become a promoter of a wrestling show?
You have to be screwed up, number one. No.
That's whatever.
You know what? For me, I was born. I don't want to say born a wrestling fan, but I mean, from my earliest memories, I was into wrestling. I mean, primarily, number one. I mean, of course, I grew up in the '80s, so you know, things like Star Wars and Hulk and, you know, A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, and all this stuff was there too. But wrestling just captivated me. From the second I watched it, I just thought it was amazing.
So what was your first wrestling memory?
The first one that I can recall with clarity is when Jake the Snake Roberts DDT'd Ricky Steamboat on the floor. But I know I watched it before that, but I remember that was the one angle that was like, whoa, you know, because everybody loved Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He was like the ultimate good guy, right?
He's still the only. He's never gone heel. He's
Yeah.
never gone bad.
So, he was like the ultimate good, and he just, I mean, not only did he take a move, he took it on the floor. I mean, this is before a lot of these high impact, death-defying moves that you see nowadays when, we're going out of the ring as a commonplace.
Yeah.
It was like, is he alive? You know what I mean? So that from there on, I was hooked on it. Growing up, it was just my mom and I dragged my poor mother to all these, events, and even WrestleManias in different cities. I've been to, the one in Vegas, the one in Anaheim, the one in Chicago. So I dragged her to all these places, and it really didn't start coming together as far as how do I get into business up until my senior year of high school when the internet started becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And so I started, oh man, that's so-and-so's real name, right? And all this other stuff.
Go Dusty, Dusty Rhodes' kid.
I can't believe that, right? So
Jerry, what about you? I mean, wrestling-wise, where did you stand? I know my first wrestling memory was WrestleMania 2 with Hogan and King Kong Bundy.
Yeah.
I remember that was it. And also the Junkyard Dog, and I think he had a match then. That was mine.
I can't say per se my first moment.
Do you like wrestling?
I used to like wrestling. Like the Attitude Era was pretty much my thing. I think a highlight definitely would be like Undertaker and McFoley, Hell in a Cell. That was like right when I was peaking. I'd say that's probably my fondest memory.
Yeah.
So, but like I was saying, in that senior year of high school, I started finding out about this thing called wrestling schools, right? And during my senior year, I ended up moving to Tampa, Florida, which, by God, is the home of every 1980s and 90s wrestler. They have lived in Tampa at one point or another. And as a fan, I was running into everyone from Hulk Hogan on down. I mean, all the time, just going to a grocery store, be like, hey, there's Hulk Hogan, right? Saw him everywhere. So that's where I started asking the wrestlers. I remember one time I wrote a letter to a guy by the name of Dean Malenko, and he ran a wrestling school right by where I was going to community college at the time. And I wrote him a letter. I was like, hey, I'm interested in wrestling, blah, blah. And he called me. And I remember this internally freaking out that Dean Malenko was calling me. He was like, hey, man, when do you want to come by? Blah, 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 And I talked to him, the Bushwhackers. So many guys lived in Tampa. It was just crazy, right? So when I was done with community college, Shawn Michaels opened his wrestling school here in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. That's when that's when I took the tour of the university I ended up going with. I just panned out. I just loaded up my Jeep Wrangler, with what I could get, which wasn't very much, right? And I drove here to San Antonio, near San Antonio, and attended a university and went to Shawn Michaels Academy at the same time.
So, how was wrestling school? Because I remember, where my family restaurant's at, Blanco Cafe, right across there was the old Blanco Junction.
Right.
So there was actually wrestling school there, and I remember one of my cousins, he was there, and I remember one time I went to go watch him, and I remember whoever the wrestler was, he was like picking on me. I was like 6. Right. And then he was like, what are you laughing at? And I was like, I don't know. But how was wrestling school for you? Because that's when I see Tough Enough, when I see, all these other, videos about it. I mean, it's just like, make you throw up all the time.
They say times are changing, and that is also affecting the wrestling business. I can say, wrestling schools have had to adopt now versus back then. Now, back then, they were just straight up, take your money and I hope you quit, right? And if you survive, okay, well maybe I'll find you a booking somewhere. I mean, that's pretty much how it was. I remember the Shawn Michaels Academy. We started off, like 12, 15 kids, right? 12, 15 students. By the end of it, there was like 4 or 5 left, right? And when I say by the end of it, like the basic course was only 3 months. So in that 3-month time, that many people dropped out, right? So, and that's the old school mentality of wrestlers was, I'm just going to run you. I'm just, and I'm not saying Shawn Michaels was a taskmaster. Actually, he was a very good trainer. But there was a lot of old school mentality, just the overall industry of guys breaking in. It seemed like particularly in the late 90s, guys were just opening wrestling schools and saying, hey, I'll take your money, and they're just beating the heck out of them, right? And, you quit. Oh, well, I got your, $2,000 or whatever, right? So, but Shawn Michaels was much, it was very tough. It was brutal. I remember, driving home and being sick to my stomach and pulling over and throwing up.
Yeah,
because I was
that's
so
what I keep
tired.
saying with all these
Yeah.
videos about wrestling school. It's just nonstop people throwing up.
I remember my arms were so tired. We would do certain exercises like wheelbarrow exercises, right? Races, and my arms were so tired I couldn't use them, and they were just literally like dragging me on the floor, right? However, out of the class, I was the first one to be in a show. I was as a ref, but I was the first one to be in a show, right? And we would do practice matches, and they're like, hey, Brandon, why don't you ref this match? And so they did this match, and Shawn Michaels, afterwards, one of the other trainers was like, hey, Shawn, what'd you think about the match? He's like, I don't know, I was watching Brandon the whole time, right? And then he calls me over and says, hey, kid, come here. And he's like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I was like, Shawn, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And he says, well, can you buy a referee shirt? And back then, Shawn Michaels, he would run like 2 or 3 times a weekend, right? I mean, he would do his shows here in San Antonio, but he would do like these little small towns. And he was like, yeah, I got like 2 shows this weekend, and I like you to ref them, and blah, blah. I was like, I'll be there, So that's kind of how it started. I've always been interested in promoting. Even down to holding my own little e-feds or whatever you call them. And, as a kid, I would organize my own super cards and, stuff like that. And I even told Shawn, like, that was my concept. I wanted to be a promoter. I wanted to, organize the events and stuff like that. I started earlier than I should have. I started in 2002. Another guy really convinced me that, oh man, you love the business so much and you're so smart and blah, blah. I just finished college. I didn't have a dime to my name, right? It was most college students when they graduate, right?
Yes.
And I didn't have a dime to my name. And he was like, oh man, it's okay. I'll get sponsors for you and blah, blah. And he didn't come through at all.
It's always a magic word, sponsors.
Yeah. He didn't find
People just throw money at you just for whatever.
He didn't find one sponsor. And, I ran the show. I ran in a gymnastics place. And we actually drew a pretty decent crowd. But, I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? It took several years for me to figure out. I still learn stuff all the time. But I can tell you right now that running my own business has taught me more about human relations and how to do business properly and how to talk to somebody than anything I've done.
Especially in when you're dealing with wrestling, because you're dealing with people that are you're not dealing with people that are doing a 9 to 5. You're dealing with people that just run through town and just hey, I'm gonna be around in Texas. Can you put me in a match? Or hey, we want you in a match.
It's very much a wild, wild west, right? Because here at a university or at a corporation or whatever, they have their set of protocols, and they have and in wrestling, there isn't that. You know what I mean? Now, it's a business like any other, right? But there's a lot of variables that throw it off.
There's no human resources.
There's no there's there's no 501ks. And,
no, there's none of that.
But
that little pamphlet about the workplace safety. That's not.
That doesn't exist. Yeah. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. There's been times where I've been frustrated, and I'm like, this is my last show or whatever. This is my last year. But then another show will happen, and then I'm like, you know what? I love this stuff. And when people are passionate about something, you can tell.
So why that jump? Okay, like for me, I've been wrestling fan for pretty much all my life. Like I said, there was wrestling right next to practically where I live. My family is all big into wrestling. And it never even dawned for me for a second, like, hey, I should go to wrestling school. What that little jump into like doing it? I mean, was it just in your head, like I have to, or was it just like
pretty much, yeah?
You just have to.
I this is what I was passionate about. This is what I placed above everything else, right? Wrestling to me, up until I had a wife and daughter and things like that, but wrestling to me was number one, right? And everything else in my life revolved around that. And I knew, because like I said, at the Shawn Michaels Academy, back in those days, they would try to run you off, right? And I'm not going to sit there and say like every day was, hey, Shawn, how's it going? There were some days I hated him or I hated going, right? But I knew, I was like, well, if I quit, if I stop this, I will never be able to at least attempt to, try my dreams, right? So, I mean, I pushed through, man. That and along with some other things that have happened with wrestling over the past 14, 15 years, has taught me a lot about patience and endurance. You have to have a thick skin. You know what I mean? You have to let some things roll off your shoulder, or I'm gonna stand up on my principles. But it makes you kind of weigh when to do that, right?
So developing your own promotion, I mean, when did it start? In
2002.
2002. So River City Wrestling, 2002. And so what ends up being the goal for that? Because, I mean, you're probably not going to make money. So well, what do you always want to try to keep doing? Is it just a matter of getting a good show?
At that time, when I was, it was about calling myself a promoter and making my mark and, maybe even making money. And I have all these ideas that are going to revolutionize wrestling. And that's the case with a lot of promoters that get involved, right? Yeah. I have, we're one of many that exist around, not just in the city and the state, but the country. And I run into new promoters all the time, and they're like that. Well, I'm going to, this is what I'm going to do, and by God, it's going to change stuff. And it's like, well, brother, if I haven't done it over 14 years, you know what I mean? Like, I probably have either thought of it or attempted it, right? But that's cool, man. You changed that business, right? Nowadays, I really enjoy watching the fans enjoy the product. That's number one, right? Because as a fan growing up, and going back to what I was saying about inclusion here at the university, growing up as a fan, I didn't know any other wrestling fans, right? They were like, they would hide the fact that they were a fan, right? So like in the 80s and 90s, oh, you're a fan? It was very hush-hush, right? It wasn't until the Attitude Era where people were starting to wear T-shirts, hey, and then the internet, and you get in groups and the group discussions and stuff. Oh, man, there's other wrestling fans. Hell, I thought I was the only one. You know what I mean? So I enjoy that the fans come to the show, whether they're young or old, and have a good time. Like, that's number one, right? Number two is the guys get something out of it, because it's brutal for indie guys, right? And I feel bad for them because, the business has changed so much to where if it's not WWE, then it's Bush League or it's minor league, right. Or, and that is such a hard, talk about marketing and branding. That is a hard thing to break through, right? That's like us saying, hey, why don't we make a basketball league? Well, there's already the NBA. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen, right? So that, for these indie guys, they're trying to live out their dreams. They're trying to do the same thing, but nobody really knows them. You know what I mean? And that's something that you can teach, but also can't teach. It's both, really, right? And so when the indie guys have a good match, or when I feel like they've discovered something, right? Oh, here's this new element I can implement, right? That's cool, right? The third is, it's still for me, you know what I mean, in terms of, but it's kind of changed the last year or two. I've been working with a lot of legends, bringing in a lot of legends that I grew up watching, and I'm a bad guy. I'm Boom Boom, Brandon Albert, right? So, but I get to work opposite guys like Hacksaw Duggan and Godfather, Tatanka, and so many other guys just over this past year that I grew up watching. Those were the guys for me. You know what I mean? Like, first time I talked to Jay to Snake Roberts inside here, man, I turned back to 10 years old again because
do you have the snake with you?
Coco Beware with Bert. We were talking about Coco Beware, right? And the
that
fact
was when I went to the show and Coco Beware and I was telling him that before the show I was like, it's just Coco Beware. It's just, I remember as a kid, it was fun. And then he starts coming out, and he has this song, comes around, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Coco Beware. Let me take a picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's so funny is, these guys are legends, right? They're not the current active WWE superstars, right? So, there is that factor where they're like, man, it's just Coco Beware, right? And you see him walk around, it's Coco, right? But then as music hits and he comes out with the bird, you're like, whoa, that's Coco Beware, right? There's some, especially for the made guys, what I call it, guys that made a big name for themselves, gone to WWE, WCW, whatever, right? There's an intangible about them that separates them from the pack. It's very difficult to make a living in wrestling. It's very difficult. It's really difficult to get WWE, especially right now. It's really hard, right? It's kind of like saying, hey, going back to the basketball, it's like picking up basketball. Hey, man, we're going to make the NBA for sure, right? No, I mean, it's only like a small little segment, right? Same thing with wrestling. But there's something about those guys. It's an if factor that, Bushwhacker Luke isn't in WWE anymore, right? He's not going to main event WrestleMania right now. But by God, when Bushwhacker Luke comes out there, you're like, that is Bushwhacker Luke, right? And, they just have that it factor about them.
So what has been, out of your 13 years with promoting River City Wrestling, what has been sort of one of those things that you thought was going to work and just flat fell on its face? So what is one of those things that, like, you did not know how big this was going to be, how over this was going to be with the crowd, how exciting it was? I mean, what worked and what didn't work? What were some of those big ones?
Well, what didn't work, and we're still trying to figure it out now, we've had 2 television deals here in San Antonio. Neither one of them lasted longer than 13 weeks.
Yeah.
So, on that end, wrestling is such a visual medium, right? That I would love to secure that. I have such a tight, I don't want to say tight, but I have good relations with San Antonio media. And then I try to get them to see the value of local productions, not just RCW, but just the value of local productions, right? Because the way things in television now work is everything is coming from a national hub. And then, here's a local newscast, right? I want to get them to see that, there's a value. I don't care if it comes on Saturday morning at 10. I mean, that's actually when you used to watch wrestling a lot, was Saturday mornings at, 10 or 11, right? Is the, produce something local. San Antonio has so much culture, and they have so many great artists here, right? You even see the I Love Tacos spray painted thing, and how celebrated that is. So I'm trying to get the media to see, just like how I'm trying to get the university to see, right? Going local is good. You know what I mean? There's so many great artists and so many great people here. So we've had 2 television deals. Both of them fell flat. They both in terms of production. I really wasn't a fan of the way they were produced. Not in terms of the matches, just the television show itself, right? And just I wasn't a fan of the slots we were given and the limited promotion that we were given, right? There was a period of time on the last TV contract that we had where...
How long ago was that?
Like 2 years ago? It wasn't all that long ago. Where it said paid programming. Like if you went to the TV guide...
It wasn't on there. Yeah.
And it says paid programming. And I kept telling them, I was like, look, you can call it RCW Wrestling, just wrestling. I don't care what you call it. But you have to call it something different on the TV guide other than, because it was just stuck there. Paid programming, right? We took over that time slot, right? But the TV guide just would not change, right? And by the time they changed it, we were 12th to 13th week, and I just canceled the deal. I was like, it's not worth the amount of production we were doing, the amount of effort, and for as little return as I saw, right? So I would love for TV stations around here to get behind it. We've done live wrestling on Great DSA on Ken's 5. We've done it like 2 or 3 times where we set up the ring in the small studio, had 20, 30 people in the crowd, right? But they're very vocal. It's inside of a studio, so it really sounds good. And we had live matches on the air, and they were really good. They were really well received, right? I think one of them Rob Schneider was he was the guest on Great Day SA. And hey Rob, do you want to commentate this match? So it was like me, the guy from Great Day SA, and Rob Schneider were commentating matches. It was unbelievable, and that's what I was trying to get him to see. I'm like, see, this is the kind of stuff you can do, right? If you believe in doing something local and push it, right? I mean, how unique is that, right? So that's what I'm trying to get him to see. As far as stuff that I didn't expect to work that did. I don't want to say the fan lumberjack strap match because that's brutal. Now
you want to show us your scars?
I don't want to take off my shirt. I want you to keep your viewers. No, I would say our relationship with the Billy Madison show has been tremendous. I cannot be more thankful to those guys. It started off real, small. TNA was doing a pay-per-view here called Lockdown. And because of our relationship with Hernandez, TNA used this for a lot of stuff to help them with promoting. And Gopher and drive this person out, or can you try to get an interview with so-and-so, right? So I took Hernandez to the Billy Madison show, and it just clicked. They're fans, and their audience is kind of our audience. A lot of the gags they do is kind of similar to a lot of the gags that we do. So it just clicked. We put the belt on Billy Madison one show, and then we made Nard the women's champion for a couple of shows. But here's what it did, because a lot of people sit there and say, "Oh man, it's like David Arquette, right? WCW champion David Arquette." I'm like, no, it's not. WCW was a national, international company that had Hogan and Sting and Flair and so on and so forth, right? This is a local company that is working with the Billy Madison show guys to develop our awareness. So, that was nothing like David Arquette, right? And I tell you, when we had the BMS guys show up to our show, I mean, our attendance went up. You know what I mean? So, that kind of, it was a very, very, very pleasant,
What's been the biggest show so far? I know the show I went to was pretty big.
The biggest show we've ever had, we had Mick Foley in 2009. We ran at this place called the San Antonio Event Center over in Marbach. We stopped counting at 1,000 people.
Wow, that's a pretty big place too.
Yeah. And what we did for that, the promotion was pretty smart. What we did was, my father-in-law does a lot of printing, stuff like that. I had my father-in-law build a big cutout of Mick Foley, right?
Okay.
And where the event center is, right off of 410, you could see it, right? So I made a double-sided cutout of Mick Foley, and I just stuck it into the ground.
Wait, how big was this?
I mean, it was life size.
Okay,
right?
so like 6 foot.
Yeah.
To...
Yeah, so you could see, and it said wrestling and the date, right? And so it was a good size sign, right? And I just stuck it right by the road, right by, so that way if you're driving at 410, you could see it.
What the hell is Mick Foley doing there?
You have.
He must be lost.
If you've ever had the pleasure of driving down Marbach at 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, right? You know how thick the traffic is there. And that's all we did. We just sat there. We just put that sign up, and I mean, people came out for it because they saw, hey, this big old Mick Foley sign with the date and time, right?
So what do you do with in regards to someone like you, little 19, 20-year-old Brandon comes to you and says, "Mister, I want to be a wrestler." What do you do with that guy?
A wrestler?
Yeah.
If it's a wrestler, the first thing I tell people to do is to get a college education. I believe in college education. I got one. I work for an institution. It's so critical to have something to fall back on. It just is. Because the road of entertainment, whether it's wrestling, music, sports, it doesn't matter, right? The road of entertainment is a very short, windy one, right? Because it's going to be hectic. It's going to throw in lots of curves, blah, blah, and it's only for this amount of time, right? Very, very, very few entertainers, regardless of genre, have a lasting power, right? The majority of entertainers have a short amount of time, and then they have some nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
But very, very few entertainers stay relevant for 2-3 decades. It's rare, okay? So if a kid came to me and said he wanted to be a wrestler, number one I'd say is get an education. I would wait until you got that. But the other thing about being a wrestler is, and I see this all the time in the indies, and I tell them, I'm like, dude, what hooked you onto wrestling in the first place, right? When you met, doesn't matter who, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, right? When you saw them, were they just normal guys, right? Or was, they larger than life personalities, because when I ran into these wrestlers, like I said, in Tampa and, other places, first wrestler I met was Sergeant Slaughter. He was at Lackland Air Force Base. And, I see this big guy with this big chin, and, I was just like, whoa, right? You have to develop that. Whether that means getting in the gym, twice a day, 5-6 days a week, to, developing your persona. And the way it was explained to me one time was, if you're walking through a crowded place, a mall or airport or whatever, right? And guys stop to look at you and say, wow, what does he do to get like that, right? And kids say, wow, I want to be like him when I grow up. And women say, I want to sleep with that guy, right? You need to develop that, right? It's so important because I see so many indie guys that love the business and they could do a flippity-do off the top rope, right? And it's fantastic. I can't do it, right? But would I really pay $10 to see him? You know what I mean? And that's what it's like that in any entertainment industry, whether it's music or acting or whatever. Not always does the best well-trained actor make it, right? It's the actor that, has something about him, right? That makes people say, I want to go see his movie, right? And it could be total crap, but you're going to still see his movie, right? Yeah. The same thing with wrestling. Like, people can pick on John Cena all they want, but they haven't lost any crowd, right? People still come out to the show, so that's what I would tell a young person, that aspires to be a wrestler. It's not for everybody. Chances are you will fail, right? That's brutal reality. But if you want to make this a go and really want to succeed, you need to develop yourself. If you want to be a doctor, you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a doctor. Let me cut your head open, right? You go to school, you go through medical school, and you do your residency. You know what I mean? You develop yourself as a doctor. You can't just start prescribing medicine and do surgery. You know what I mean?
So, so a friend of mine and really good friend of yours, Eric Perez,
right,
aka Joey Spector. So, I interviewed him for another project, and I asked him, what's left? What do you got to do? What do you want to do? And he wants to try and take another shot at the big leagues. But if not, he's like, me, I'd like to be just a referee there. So for guys like that, I mean, how do they come to you with grand illusions of, and then
happens all the time.
Because you've had guys, you've had like Lance Hoyt when I went to the show. You had him. He was an RCW guy,
right.
But he was in WWE, ECW, right. So he's been around and he's still and he's still somewhat recognizable names. But I mean, you got guys who are like thinking that they're gonna go that you're a stepping stone to their big dreams. I mean, how do they have to learn on their own, or do you have to break it to them? Like, this is probably gonna be it.
Both, and sometimes it's really rough.
Yeah.
You take a kid like Lance. I've known Lance since 2000, right? And I say kid, we're the same age. But you take a guy like Lance.
Little fella.
And Lance,
he's like 6'5".
Yeah, and see, here's the thing. Yeah, exactly. Lance is like 6'5", 6'6", fantastic shape. I mean, good-looking dude.
Late 30s and still looks like he's late 20s and still built.
That's what I'm talking about. If you have that it factor, where guys are like, man, what do you do to look like that, right? And girls, hit on him all the time, and kids are like, man, I want to grow up to be just like that. That's what I'm talking about. And so, a lot of times, what happens with the aspiring indie wrestlers is, they learn some moves, right? They develop a loose character. It's not really tightened up, but they develop a loose character, and they perform in front of an RCW crowd, which is usually very passionate, and, a good crowd, and they get 20 followers on Facebook, right? Same 20 followers that follow everybody else, right?
President Obama.
And they are the biggest star. I don't want to do that. It doesn't make any sense. Or I don't want to, I'm like, wait a second now.
That's how what Stone Cold would do.
Let me take you by the hand. We can go downtown San Antonio, and I'm gonna say, hey. I'm just gonna stop random people on the street and say, hey, do you know who this guy is? And if 2 say yes, I will admit that you're a star.
And that's all of his cousins.
Yeah. But if I take Jake the Snake Roberts downtown, everybody knows who that is, right? If I take Hacksaw Jim Duggan, everybody knows who that is, right? So, and it's rough because you don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? Because this guy, the indie guys are trying their best, and they're trying to live out a dream too.
Yeah, because I interviewed a couple of them when I went to the show last year, and then there was a couple of guys, very, very modest. Yeah. Just, I hope I do a good job. That's all I want to do tonight.
Yeah, and there's some that we have that I have very high hopes for. One is Delilah Doom. She's a female wrestler.
Yeah, she's great. She's she's fun to talk to. We interviewed her for a project as well.
And women in entertainment is brutal. Okay, I mean, it's a much hard. I would say it's harder than a man to make it, right? Even though generally in wrestling it's a man's world, right? But women is just harder. They're judged differently. They're looked at differently. I mean, it's hard, right? Delilah is one of the few that I've come across locally in the Indies that is able to bridge those judgments and do it well, right? So she's able to connect with kids, men, women. You know what I mean? Whereas some other women aren't. They miss the mark on one or two of those groups.
Yeah.
And so, with Delilah, she's able to do that. I have very high hopes for her. I think she'll do extremely well. I could see her. I don't know about WWE. I know WWE has a certain look that they're going for. It's possible, but I don't see why she couldn't be in your Ring of Honors and your, trips down to Mexico and Japan. So I see that for her, right? But I know that WWE has a very, they have their own requirements, right? But you never know. I mean, things are changing. Like I said, in wrestling too, and you can even tell like stuff is changing in WWE right now.
Yeah. So we're gonna get a little wrestling talk, and we'll go back and we'll finish everything up. I just wanted to. The recent WrestleMania, there was the whole Divas Championship into Women's Championship. Now, so I get why it's kind of a big deal, but also part of me kind of rolls my eyes a bit. And here's why: is that when they started making the whole Divas thing, and obviously it was for let's get them calendars, let's have them do this, have them do that. But then all throughout though, they were constantly saying, we're positive influences for girls.
Right.
And it was constantly that. And then it's like, now that's stupid. Now we're really positive influence for girls. And that's where it's kind of like, for me, it was kind of like, come on. Because they were basically saying that. You brought that up. So
it's like I said, the business right now is in a state of change, right? Because you have old school mentality, right, that is saying, no, this is the way it should be, right? And even how people are introduced into the business and how women are perceived in the business. And then you have a whole other side that is saying, no, this is how you should be introduced into business and this is how women should be treated. It will not be like this in 20 years. Right. And so I understood the move, you know what I mean? Like I understood why they were called divas, and I understood why now the change. Change isn't easy, look at us here at the university. Change is not easy. It's not easy, to go from one direction to the other, right? Or to go from one thought process to the other. It takes adjusting, right? Because you're going to have one segment that says this is the way it should be, and they're not going to give, right? And then you have another segment that isn't going to give. Maybe this side's a little bit more conservative, this side's more progressive. It doesn't really matter, but that's just the way it's going to be. But I think over the next decade or two, it won't be an issue. It's going to go more towards one side, And, I mean, the thing about change is you can either adapt and make that change or not, right? And eventually it's going to die off with that generation, right? Whether it's life or business. Blockbuster Video didn't make a change when they should have, and now they're out of business. So,
So when you're dealing with indie wrestlers, you're dealing with a lot of guys who, they travel around the state and whatnot, and then, like you said, you bring in a legend, and the legend sometimes will just do autograph signings, sometimes they do a quick match, sometimes do a long match like you had with Tatanka. Right. So, have you thought about like constantly bringing in people that people know, or are you always for sure about like building people up that are local? Like again, Joey Spector, because he's been around for a while, but he's sort of an integral part to
both. Wrestling. It's both because unfortunately, wrestling here isn't like how it is on the East Coast, right? And I say that in terms of the support and the awareness. Right. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. So you just have to adjust to it. Yeah. And it's like I said before with the indie guys, God bless them. They're trying so hard, right? And they're paying their dues and stuff like that. But like I said before, if I need to humble one of them, I'll do the survey. I'll be like, okay, let's just walk down the street and see how many people say, hey, you're so-and-so, right? And, versus if I bring in a name, okay, and not only do we get to work with that name and it's cool, not only does that name, and most names come in and they usually have a locker room talk, or they pull a couple wrestlers to the side and say, hey, I like what you're doing, but do X, Y, Z, right? So not only do you get those two benefits, but you also get the benefit of the people are going to want to come out and meet that name, right? So they come out and they want to meet that name, and they get to see these other guys, you know what I mean? So it's, right now, RCW is not, no indie really is in a place where they can do a major theatrical production. The money's just not there, right? So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to work around it by doing some other ideas like bringing in a name, right? So that way they go to it, oh man, I like these guys. Well, I'll come back next month. You know what I mean? I had a good time, blah, blah, blah. So it is kind of both. Now if we were on the East Coast, if we were in Philadelphia, it'd be a different strategy, right? But here, you kind of have to go with that because that way when the people see the flyer and they're like, oh man, that's cool, man. Al Snow's coming here or whatever, right? Then they come to the show and they might have a good time and okay, RCW, man, I'll look them up and I'll follow them and I'll come out to more shows, right? So that's the strategy behind that.
Last thing, one thing that sort of caught me off guard when I went to check out the show and I was there beforehand and I saw, how everything is. That was when X-Pac was there, and immediately when he comes in, sort of everybody comes around him and sort of pays their respects. So is that something that you sort of bestow upon them? And you sort of make sure that they do that, or is that something that, as indie wrestlers, they've got to learn
both.
that?
If guys don't know, we try to educate them quickly. Yeah. Right. I tell people, man, it's kind of like the mafia. You know what I mean? You have your made guys and then your guys that are trying to, get into the group. And made guys deserve that respect. So when a made guy walks in, and you're not considered that, right? You're trying, right? You're trying, and hopefully one day you get there. But yeah, when you walk in, you show them that respect. It's no different than the military. They do the same thing. If a general walks in, everybody else stands and salutes, right? President Manson walks in. We're going to go up to her and say, President Manson, hope you're having a good day or nice to meet you or whatever, right? It's not.
I should have everybody do that to me.
Yeah.
I should just have everybody.
Here's the thing, though.
Editor, you're here.
Yeah.
We can sit down now.
That's rough. But it takes, it takes the resume, right? And so.
No, and I thought because that's again, I listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts, so I hear a lot of backstage, and when I hear, people talk about when they break into the business and they're like, when they see the new people come in, they always say in the locker room, they're just like, you know what, if you're new, the first thing you want to do is introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure.
And just be very modest, because if you don't, everybody doesn't like you if you don't do that.
And that's just good business. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't just apply to wrestling, although that's a brotherhood and that's a fraternity type thing. Mm-hmm. But it just applies to anything else. I mean, if you want to do business with someone, I mean, you can't sit in the corner, right, and be meek. It's not going to work out for you, right? That doesn't mean you're overly aggressive either, right? But, you do have to make your presence known. You do have to make your mark. Life is not going to do that for you. Mm-hmm. You have to do that yourself. Now, granted, I mean, there's opportunities depending on what you believe in, okay? But there's opportunities that are presented, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't, you yourself take them, nothing's ever going to happen. I told wrestlers that all the time. I'm like, I know you think because you wrestle and some of your stuff gets on YouTube or whatever that Vince McMahon's going to knock on your door and say, oh my God, where have you been all my life? Mm-hmm. That's not how life works, man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you want to work for Texas A&M-San Antonio, you got to prove yourself. You can't just, Matson's not going to show up and go, hey, can you work for Texas A&M-San Antonio? That's not how it works, right? Life is just like that. The things, whatever you believe in, like I said, but opportunities are given, or are presented, right? But you have to be willing to knock the door down, or at least open it, right? No one else is going to do that for you. No one.
Yeah. Can you give us a quick rundown of like some of the people that have come through, as in like that have wrestled and because
sure.
that have become sort of a name? I mean, obviously, like I said, Lance Hoyt. Then
Hernandez.
there's someone Hernandez. He's TNA. You posted about someone recently as well.
Well, there was a guy named Gerard St. Christopher. Now he's in NXT.
Okay.
We've had several guys come through and, they get tryouts or they get, to Ring of Honor or whatever. But, it's good, man. It's good when they make it. It's like college students here. It's like, they made it. That's awesome, right? Because the road is not easy, just like being a student, it's not easy. And, so when they achieve that, it's special. It is special. It deserves recognition.
Cool.
So.
All right, so give us a quick rundown. A for the university, B for RCW. What's coming up?
Well, for the university, we have the Festival de Cascarón coming up. That's a very big event for us in terms of raising money for student organizations and just raising our enhancement here in the city, right? Our visibility.
It's our last event of Fiesta.
It is. It's the finale of Fiesta. The very last event's going to be here on campus, April 24th. We have Tracy Lawrence headlining. We have another great group called Sister C. They were on the X Factor, I believe. We have kids activities. We have Big Hero 6 that's going to play. We were talking this morning, hopefully it comes to fruition, about showing the Spurs game here, like on a big screen, like on the courtyard, because the Spurs are scheduled to play that day. And it's just fun. Like I said, it raises our awareness as a university, raises money for the student orgs. So it's pretty big event. For RCW, my next event is May 6th. It's at the Old Main Ice House in Cibolo or Chibolo, or I keep messing up that name. We're going to have Tatanka there. We got some pretty big names lined up. In June, for our event, we're going to have Barbarian and Warlord from the 80s. And then there's some pretty big names that are going to come down over the next few months. WrestleCon was very good to us, which was a convention during WrestleMania weekend. So, you're going to see some pretty big names walk through the door. So.
Cool. All right. So with that, make sure to visit mesquite-news.com for all the news about A&M-San Antonio. San Antonio. I can't even say it. Do a search for JagCast on iTunes. Subscribe to us there. Subscribe to us on SoundCloud. And make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Mesquite and on Facebook at Mesquite News. So you can follow Jerry at Jerry Quijano on Twitter. Follow Brandon at RCW Forever and
Brandon Oliver 1.
And Oliver 1.
Yeah,
and you can follow me at Original Gamer 1 because that's what happens when you don't get on Twitter quick enough. And we'll be back for another show before school ends. So we will talk to you later.